All right, y'all, since the election, political pundits have blamed Democrats for ignoring white working-class Americans who came out in droves to vote for Donald Trump. But the Huffington Post recently did a survey which found that Trump supporters were more motivated by something else. The website found that Trump supporters believe that black folks are less deserving than average Americans. In fact, when you hear the phrase average Americans, they don't even include us. That viewpoint was the main dividing line between Clinton and Trump supporters. In fact, if you look at respondents were asked if they agreed with the statement that average Americans have gotten less than they deserve. More than half of Trump and Clinton voters agreed. Yes. Well, but when respondents were asked if blacks have gotten less than they deserve over the past few years, 57% of Clinton folks said yes. Just 12% of Trump voters said yes. 62% of black folks said yes. Overall, 28% of white said yes. Now, also want to throw this out there because when you talk about this whole issue of who's a real American, when you hear that phrase, are you included in that? Not only that, when you hear this discussion of the working class in America, why is that somehow excluding black folks who work and Latinos who work? In fact, people of color are actually, if you look at the various stats, the hardest working people in the country. Let's talk about it. John Hope Bryant, Angela Rye, Greg Carr, Chris Metzler, Cleo Monago. See, this was interesting to me because, look, I'm in the words business, and I tell people you have to listen. During Donald Trump's, a lot of his rallies, he would talk about, we are going to put America back to work, and we're going to help the African Americans and the Latinos. And I told people, listen to phrases. What he was saying is, I'm going to help y'all, and we're going to do something about them. That's really what this poll speaks to. And I think a lot of people just don't understand there's this otherness, if you will. I'm going to use Newt Gingrich's phrase for President Obama when he got elected. There's this otherness about him. We are seen as this otherness.
Roland, that's why what you've been doing by putting Reverend Barbara out front with this fusion agenda is very important. It is never, non-whites have never been real Americans. And then you see the Democrats getting ready to quadruple down on this silly fantasy that they can pursue these somehow missing white voters. It's a reinforcement of whiteness. They're playing into the hands of racists.
Even the term non-whites is a reinforcement of whiteness.
Of course.
We're saying we are non.
No, of course.
And how we think and how it impacts how we behave and how we see things, and we're involved in this thinking, which is why we haven't resisted enough to become so-called real Americans, whatever the heck that is.
I don't know we ever can.
Well, in some respects, though, we also perpetuate that myth. When we talk about affirmative action, for example, as much as I've worked in this industry, I have never heard someone say to me, bring me employees, white employees who are qualified. Yet what we say is we're going to hire African Americans and other minorities who are qualified.
Well, actually, that's not we. I mean, in fact, that's what was been driven. What happens, because I've actually done panels where I would stop. I say, hold up, don't use the qualified, because when you talk about white folks, you don't use the qualified.
That's right.
So it's adopting sort of that language, and again, and I have to tell black people who are in HR. Listen to what you're saying. You are reinforcing another narrative.
Well, but that is exactly my point. So when I say we, the people who are in diversity work, the people who are in HR work, we are taking that language and adopting it because in a lot of respects what we're saying is we don't want to lower the standards. I think we have to be conscious of that as well.
I think a couple things. One is I think that we don't do that. I think that that's an overgeneralization, and there are probably some on the fringe that do that, but I know certainly the diversity work that I've done, I never say that, and in fact I challenge it the same way that Roland does. I want to get back to this poll though, because I think it's important when we look at exit polling data from this election, it says very clearly that Hillary Clinton won voters on the economy. Where she did not win is on fighting terrorism, which is code for Muslims and supporting a Muslim ban. Where she did not win is on supporting immigration, which we know is code for being anti-Mexican or anti-brown. People don't know for some reason that black people and white people also immigrate here. I think that we have to then understand that that is, again, a racial issue. She did not win on issues of race. Donald Trump won an us versus them campaign. He ran it and he won it. And I think that we have to be honest now in saying we hear Trump voters all the time talking about identity politics, stop using identity politics. Well, white identity politics is what galvanized and went out to vote. The Get Out the Vote effort was on white identity politics.
John, Tom Burrell has a book called Brainwash, and he talked about, in that book, he talked about really this history in America of how how folks have been brainwashed. And in this country, I don't care where you go, if you throw out poverty, and polling that will show it, instantly they'll think, oh, I'm talking about black people.
That's right.
Okay. I've challenged people to say, I'm like, look, numbers don't lie. When LBJ launched the war on poverty, he didn't go to the Delta.
Right.
He went to the no teeth folks in West Virginia.
Yeah, more
No. I'm saying it for real. I'm saying no teeth because they didn't have dental, they didn't have health care. Right. And then when you hear folks say, well, you vote Democrat, oh my God, poor folks, this Charles Barkley quote, poor folks have been voting Democrat for 50 years, they're still poor. Some of the brokest states in America are red states,
including his home state, Alabama.
A third of every federal dollar in Mississippi, the state that says they reject federal policy, they don't want federal help, is a federal dollar, as an example. The poorest state in America. Look, we're rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic in many ways because we're talking about black and brown and white, whatever. The real issue is green. Whether you're white, black, red, brown, or yellow, what everybody want to see is some more green. And there's no real progressive strategic agenda around changing that reality. The reality is there's more poor whites in America, which is your point, than poor anybody else, but no one raises that point. But a 500 credit score neighborhood looks the same, whether you're white rural or black urban. You have a check casher next to a payday loan lender, next to a rent-to-own store, next to a title lender, next to a liquor store, all feeding on poverty, financial illiteracy, low tax base, and depression. And that's whether you're white, rural, or urban, or outside of a military base. That drives all of this hate and depression that somebody is running for office and feeding on. And I want to change that.
But when you hear the poll where there's this belief that, they're getting more stuff.
It's economic, Roland. No. This happened in 1935 with Hitler. He was jailed in 1925 as a crackpot. And then they saluted him in 1939. The only thing that changed was that the Germany's economy fell apart. And so they started looking for somebody else to blame. This has been, whenever you have racial strife, you have economic strife 10 years before it. This is as old as the history itself, and I'm suggesting we're being punked.
And Chris, we saw this in California when they passed the amendment targeting illegal immigrants. That was because the California economy tanked largely due to the closure of military bases.
Correct.
But it was, we got to blame somebody.
Yeah, and
this is economic.
This is economic. I absolutely agree with you. It is the racialized piece first, and then you get into the economic catastrophes. And I think this conversation, this election conversation, a lot of it has to do with economics.
So let me.
If you look at things based on facts and formulas, it does get down to finances. When you look at things in terms of the hunger for power and the hunger to retain white supremacy, all that stuff goes out of the water.
With all due respect,
white folks are willing to be...
Let's stop there. White supremacy. Let's stop there. No.
Wait. Finish your point.
I don't want to stop.
I'm going to go to John. Finish your point.
The whole issue around black people deserving is a code for dehumanizing us compared to white folks, no matter what goes on. And we have to understand that the reason why we keep on losing compared to other people as a collective, we have individuals who get some stuff, but as a collective people compared to Asians and whites and everybody else, we keep on being on the back end of the stick because we won't take a look at what's going on here in this society in terms of how white supremacy influences our own thinking.
I'm about to say something that's going to anger everybody, which is fine. I'm 71% Cameroon, African. Then I'm 26% European. The rest is Asian, Indian, and other. We're all mixed race. So if I hate white folks, I hate myself. If you want to make the Grand Master of Ku Klux Klan have a heart attack, give him a DNA test because he's part black. So stop. So that's a separate issue.
I got it.
That's a separate issue.
Hold up.
So to say the white supremacist middle class person who lives somewhere in Atlanta who voted for DT, I'm gonna call his name. They weren't white supremacists. They lost their job in 2009, making $100,000 a year. They're decent, God-loving people. They didn't get the job for 2 years. And when they got rehired, they make $50,000 a year, half their pay. They're pissed off, they're frustrated. Then they look at TV and they say, I don't recognize this country, I can't get a job, no one's batting for me. And let me finish my sentence.
1 second.
And that person gets pimped by somebody who's running on a fear agenda saying somebody else is your problem. Right. And I think by us feeding into this narrative that all white people are the devil just pits them against us.
Somebody said it. Why did you
Wait. Greg, go ahead.
apologize.
It's green, right?
I apologize
agree completely. I agree completely. But you know better than anybody here. Finance is international.
Yes, sir.
White supremacy is global. When you see these alliances between the far-right parties in France and in Germany and other places and Donald Trump, what you're seeing is people are being fooled domestically, but money knows no national border. Meaning what? Domestically, they use race, they use these things, but finance capital is going to make a whole lot of money. And with all due respect, acting like we can somehow get in that game and win it, we're the reason they have the money in the first place, brother.
No, we can win. No, we can win this game. We can win this game. We can win this game.
Let me say this.
We can win this game.
Let me say this. We built this country for free.
Amen.
We've never been paid for that.
That's right.
And the fact, to get back to the point, which is whether or not we are deserving, the fact that people don't see that we are deserving when we were never paid for what we've done has all types of racial animus and oppression tied to it. If we continue to ignore the fact that people find targets who are other, who are black, who are brown, who are Asian, who are different from what they deem as real American, when we all know that real American looked nothing like the white pilgrim that came.
Say that right now.
Like let's just be really clear.
That's right.
So I'm not saying that this is about people who were punked or bamboozled or anything. I'm saying the reality of that. The reason why they were able to succumb to that is because they needed someone to blame, and that is about a white superiority complex.
Agreed.
That does not mean
Agreed.
that economics is not at the root of it, but I'm saying let's not pretend
Agreed.
that racism isn't front and
Agreed.
center. in this.
So, John said we can win at this. Well, we come back. Hold on. Oh, everybody calm down. This is still my show.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When we come back,
Sometimes.
calm down. When we come back, we will hear his game plan for winning. That's next. NewsOne Now, TV1.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.